Good morning, everyone. My name is Johannes Dairit. I'm from the Philippines. And my co-chair for this session is Valeria Campos from Brazil. So welcome to IMCAS and welcome to this session on skin quality beyond the surface, systemic, neuro, and nutritional approaches. So for our first speaker, may we call Dr. Chitra Vivek Anand, a colleague from a dermatologist from India.
Great. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk a little bit about inner health because a lot of time we talk about what's happening on the outside of the face and we're always doing procedures, but how do we optimize our outcome? So it's important to look on the inside and how we can stabilize the inner health of the patient while we're optimizing the outside with the procedures. I have no disclosures, but if you think about it, right, this is a $7 billion global market when we're talking about beauty from within. And it's nutraceuticals that I'm actually going to talk about. But a lot of time when people think nutraceuticals, they forget that medical nutraceutical or pharma grade nutraceutical is very different from OTC. And today, one of the facts that we see is that on average, a person takes between 3 to 5 OTC nutraceuticals just on their own, seeing social media, not necessarily prescribed by their doctor anymore, just because it's a trending molecule. But as doctors, as physicians, it's important that we have an evidence-backed approach to this. So what is it? Why is it beneficial to us? It really is when we're looking at what are we doing with the skin health. We're looking at enhancing the hydration, looking at collagenesis, we're looking at antioxidant protection, we're looking for anti-inflammatory effects so that we have less post-op sequelae or PIH, especially with skin of color. We're also looking at what we can do to accelerate the healing process, and that's where nutraceuticals play a hand in hand. And one of the ways to categorize this is to think of what nutraceuticals are in the antioxidant category, what are anti-inflammatory by nature, what can be collagen boosters, what help with barrier repair, what are photoprotective by nature, what are the adaptogens, which are the newest ones that we talk about, stress modulators, and what are the mitochondrial or metabolic support. So if we think of this, then we're easily able to slot our nutraceuticals into which category we want. Otherwise, it's very tempting to have vitamin B, vitamin D, vitamin C, everything, but it really is what is most appropriate to that patient in front of us. And how do we integrate this? So in my practice at Cosmoderm, I have a chain of about 15 clinics across India now. And what we've done is we've integrated this. So we look at it pre-procedure, how can we support them for 4 to 6 weeks. By doing this, we're able to enhance their results and reduce the post-op sequelae. And then the entire goal is, where are we? Are we reducing inflammation? Are we boosting the repair? Or is it a glow and tone? And the core nutraceuticals that we work with. Now, I want to start off this talk with collagen peptides. I think it's a misnomer to even call them collagen peptides. They're more oral peptides because it's not really producing collagen. All the studies show that it helps with hydration, it helps with the plumpness of the skin, as we call it. And it does work on suppressing the MMP1 and MMP9, so it reduces collagen degradation, but it doesn't boost collagen production. What it does is it enhances hyaluronic acid. So it's dermal hydration that we talk about. That's dermal ECM modeling. And the indications here, we know it's tremendous in skin aging, but what might impress you is that it has a role in hair too, because you want to work with the follicular structure. So when you're working on the follicular structure, the peptides are important, especially to give strength to the hair follicle matrix. And it's about, on an average, 2.5 to 10 grams per day. So it's about 1 or 2 teaspoons per day. That's what we advise. Now, glutathione, this is something that's viral and everybody talks about. I think half of India now just takes glutathione supplements. And I've seen this in Asia too. And I'm sure you agree agree because you're from Philippines, which is where the gluta revolution came from. But it does have something. It's not a whitening, lightening, brightening pill, but what it is it's a super antioxidant. And it does work on tyrosinase inhibition, conversion of eumelanin to pheomelanin. But that happens when you have excess of glutathione, not your regular RDA allowance. So that's important. And when you come back to your normal RDA allowance, this improvement wears off. It also helps regenerate vitamin C and vitamin E. So it reduces the reactive oxygen species burden. So overall, it has a role in pigmentation, PIH, and for people who are photosensitive. Because if they're photosensitive, they go into the sun, it either causes erythema or it causes PIH. And there is a decrease in this when they're on these supplements. And this is the white paper to back that up. And you can see that this paper does talk about ultraviolet B-induced melanogenesis and oxidative stress. It's a mice study, but it translates into humans just as well. The next one I'm going to talk about is omega acids, right? Or polyunsaturated fatty acids. A lot of people will say omega-3, but what's critical to remember is that there's omega-3s, which is your alpha levulinic acids, DHAs, EPAs, but there's also omega-6, where you have the gamma levulinic acids. And it's important to look at it as a balance between the omega-3 and the omega-6. You can't have just one. You've got to do the combination, otherwise they can get toxic in themselves. And they are modulating inflammatory mediators like your ILF-1 beta, TNF alpha, interleukins 8, which are important pathways even in melasma, in acne, in rosacea, etc., when we're talking on the aesthetic dermatology side. And it does help with the normalizing of the sebum composition. That's why there's an increased role in stubborn acne for omega-3s that we see right now. And you ideally combine it with zinc and niacinamide if you're doing acne therapy. Omega-6, gamma levulinic acid, a huge role in perimenopausal skin, in postmenopausal skin, because gamma levulinic acid actually works very well in balancing the epidermal lipids and the barrier integrity, right? So this is great for a very dry and dehydrated skin. It also is an immune modulator again, so it's great for atopic skin. And you know, a lot of people talk about evening primrose oil in women, but evening primrose is this. GLA is the actual molecule in that, and that's why you're thinking omega-6. So just remember this, right? Omega-6 to omega-3 ratio should be 2:1 to 4:1. So if you're doing this dosing, it's critical to maintain this balance and not just give one fish oil capsule, which everybody talks about. Curcumin. I'm from India. We have curcumin, which is turmeric and everything in our diet. But curcumin is the active component right here, and it downregulates NF-κ-beta and COX-2, which is anti-inflammatory. It also suppresses the melanogenesis, and it stimulates wound healing through the VGF and TGF alpha beta pathways. So it's great for wound healing. So post-procedure and pre-procedure, so that you have anti-inflammatory effects right there, and you give this extra support. So it's seen as a 500 to 1,000 milligram dose per day, and there are many forms available, but one of the best forms is actually oral droplets. Sublingual droplets is very good, or putting it in a glass of water. Coenzyme Q10, something everybody talks about. This is mitochondrial function. So it reduces oxidative aging, but it also energizes cells, cell energizer. So anti-aging, when you're thinking any of those longevity regenerative procedures, CoQ10 is a great support because you want cellular energy to be at its max. And it does prevent oxidative stress, but it's about fibroblast energy. So any collagenesis, neocollagenesis procedure, this is where CoQ10 has. 50 to 150 milligrams, but 150 milligrams is ideal. A lot of times we have to understand RDA came from 25 years ago when the body mass index was very different. So you need to be on the higher end of the spectrum when we're thinking RDA. Pycnogenol pine bark extract. Why am I talking about it? I'm really talking about it mainly because of its melanogenesis modulation, and also because it has a photo blocking effect. So it actually boosts your tolerance to sunlight before you can get to a MED reading. That's the erythema score, which they do for sunscreen. So they found that people who took pycnogenol and fern pine tree blocks, actually they could stay out in the sun for a longer time before they had an erythema response to this. So it's great with melasma, photo damage, and also for microcirculation effects. This next one, polypodium, or the fern block. Now, fern block is the patented molecule. It's used in various commercial preparations, but this is the one that actually reduces UV-induced ROS, and it also helps protect the DNA. So this is something that we actually use a lot of in our patients when we're working on any kind of melanogenesis. Astaxanthin, something that's become quite popular because we're talking about barrier function, right? Hyaluronic acid, transepidermal water loss. What can we do here? So astaxanthin actually works on neutralizing the oxidant and the lipid peroxidation. So which is important, lipid, because you want to maintain the barrier function. Barrier function is a mix of oil and water. So that's where the role is. So it works with the skin roughness and elasticity. So we work with this mainly for dry atopic skin, typically. Hyaluronic acid oral has caught up with a lot of patients. It's become one of those trending molecules. Does it really help? It does actually help with dermal hydration and stimulating the hyaluronic acid synthesis. And you know that good hyaluronic acid is important for collagenesis. So that's where it comes in. It also inhibits elastase and hyaluronidase. So it actually preserves the integrity of the extracellular matrix for us. So dryness, wrinkles, post-peel procedures, so that you get quicker relating of the tissue with less exfoliation, and hydration support for even scalp barrier. Like when you're thinking seborrheic dermatitis, this is something that actually has a role in that. 120 to 240 milligrams. Am I done? One more minute? Okay, perfect. We're almost done. And then oral ceramides has another role to play, same thing, along with transepidermal water loss, atopic skin, eczema-prone skin, etc. 500 milligrams per day. But when you give any of these, right, hyaluronic acid, astaxanthin, ceramides, people do have a little bit of what they think is weight gain, but it's actually water retention, so they'll talk to you about it. Nicotinamide, something that's coming up, again, vitamin B3 for cytokines and barrier repair. Ashwagandha is something that I want to really touch upon because this is an adaptogen, and adaptogens have a big role to play, especially with reducing cortisol and inflammation. Probiotics, we're talking about gut health now, and gut health plays an important role. We know the gut health, brain axis with skin axis, so acne, rosacea, eczema, post-laser redness. N-acetylcysteine or NAC, it's a conducive, so if you're doing glutathione, you give NAC with it, it increases the absorption of the glutathione and increases the reactive, it reduces the ROS for us. Now, how do I use this? I'll just get to the protocols faster rather than the studies. Magnesium, yes, because everybody's talking about magnesium, but one has to realize that you don't really need magnesium unless you're deficient. So just giving magnesium makes no sense, but it is great for people under stress, cortisol pathway. Where do I use it? Pre-procedure, we begin these antioxidants, vitamin C, omega-3 polypodiums, hydration, adaptogens. Post-procedure, what do I use? And this is my maintenance and radiance protocol. And how do we do this? We stack this up, right? There's a clinical algorithm that we use. If it's pigmentation, if it's acne, if it's anti-aging, sensitive skin, and for hair loss and stress. So this is how we stack this up. And what I want to say in the last closing slide, you have to use GMP certified, clinically validated brands. Just because something is made in a GMP factory doesn't mean they're using the best ingredients. There are 6 levels of ingredient quality. Somebody may say, I have 250 milligrams of this, but they could have level 6, which is the poorest quality. So you have to look for the grade and make sure that it's there, and take a procedural consent, even though it's nutraceuticals. So it's evidence-backed, but you need to have clinical oversight when you're giving this to your patients. It's not just another nutraceutical. You have to think about it as a treatment. And so thank you for your attention. This is my Instagram. Ping me if you need the slide deck. Happy to share it with you. This is our regenerative conference that we have in India, September 11th and 12th. Invite all of you to come. We'll talk a lot more on these protocols. Thank you so much.
Excellent talk. I took some pictures because I really learned about it. Congratulations. And now we are asking our next speaker. Thank you so much to Avoid It, direct from the United States. Dr. Jacqueline Watt-Marker. Next generation is skincare with adaptogens. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Jacqueline Watchmaker. I'm a cosmetic dermatologist in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'm so excited to be here in Thailand. And I'm excited to be sharing, I think, up until a few years ago, a relatively under-discussed topic, but I'm so glad in the last year, every conference I've been to have started mentioning adaptogens, and in the first talk of the day, we already heard about them, but I'm gonna delve in a little bit deeper. So what are adaptogens? I think this word gets kind of thrown around often, but what is the definition? Well, adaptogens are plants, and they are plants that help the body cope with stressors. And the stressors can be physical stress, like recovering from a hard workout or sleep deprivation. It can be emotional stress, like dealing with anxiety. It can be environmental stress, like helping to recover from, UV-induced damage or pollution. And basically, these adaptogens help the body with resiliency and help the body with homeostasis, kind of bringing the body back to a state of balance. And in order to be considered an adaptogen, a plant must have three main properties. It must be non-toxic at normal doses. It must help support the body's ability to cope with stress. And again, helps the body return to a stable state. And there are a lot of different adaptogens. I'm sure everyone in this room have heard of some of them. Commonly discussed ones are ashwagandha, ginseng, licorice root, certain mushrooms. So adaptogens aren't new. They've been used in medicine for thousands of years. They were used in Ayurvedic and Chinese and native medicine historically very significantly, but it wasn't until the mid-20th century when Eastern European scientists and Soviet scientists were looking for a natural way to help both their athletes and their soldiers help them adapt to stress and recover from trauma and physical exertion easier and better. And then in 1947, the term adaptogen was actually coined, but it wasn't until the 1990s when Western scientists really began to take note of adaptogens, especially as the integrative and complementary kind of wellness medicine movement started to grow, especially in the United States. But even more recently, adaptogens have been discussed and used in topical skincare. So we're gonna delve into that a little bit more today. So how do adaptogens specifically help our favorite organ, the skin? They can help in a lot of different ways. They can help repair the skin barrier function by enhancing lipid synthesis and upregulating genes related to fatty acid and ceramide biosynthesis. They can also help regulate the skin's HPA-like axis. I think in medical school, all of us learned about the body's HPA-like axis, but actually the skin has its own kind of stress adaptive response like HPA-like axis as well, and these adaptogens can help dampen overactive cortisol signaling in the skin. Also, they're anti-inflammatory. They can help inhibit oxidative stress pathways. They can limit inflammatory feedback loops. They can help with endogenous antioxidant pathways. So they can help support the skin and help the skin recover in a lot of different ways. And I just wanted to discuss briefly two different serums that contain adaptogens. The first one I'm going to be talking about is a blend of adaptogens in a serum that's commercially available in the United States and I think soon Asia. And it contains panax root ginseng, magnolia bark extract, among other adaptogens. And there is some good, robust data involving these adaptogenic serums. This is just one study. It was an in vitro study. And basically what they did was they took a full thickness skin model and then applied this adaptogenic serum to the skin for 24 hours. And then the control was just saline on top of the full thickness epidermal skin. model, and they analyzed gene expression in the two categories. And what they found was upregulation in many of the genes that do help the skin respond to stressors, two of which are the aryl hydrocarbon receptor, which helps regulate epidermal barrier integrity, helps with toxins and pollutants, helps with oxidative stress. And then the other one was thioredoxane reductase, which also helps oxidative stress, regulates apoptosis, helps with wound healing. And basically what they found was the adaptogenic serum upregulated these genes, indicating that it helped the skin with resiliency and bouncing back and coping with stressors. But clinically, what does this look like? There have been multiple studies done showing that these adaptogenic serums can basically help with all components of global skin quality. But what really stands out to me in a lot of these studies is the reduction in redness when using adaptogenic serums, and it makes sense. Redness can be multifactorial, but usually there's some underlying, inflammation on the skin, and these serums can help with that. In the United States, a lot of these serums do also have the National Rosacea Society acceptance, meaning that they're great for patients with rosacea. A lot of adaptogenic serums are gentle. They're botanical blends, and they're good for patients with stressed skin, sensitive skin, skin that needs help with resiliency. Also, it makes sense that a serum that helps with resiliency and kind of bouncing back from stress, that these adaptogenic serums would be helpful in the post-procedure period. So a study was done here using non-ablative fractional laser, and basically it found that pre-treating and then post-treating with this adaptogenic serum helped with erythema and helped the skin recover quicker after a procedure. The other serum I want to briefly talk about is a serum that contains Microcystis perfora ferment, and a lot of us know and love this extract already. It's from giant sea kelp. We've known for a while that it helps with stress protection and that it's non-toxic and that it's beloved by a lot of people around the world. But we've recently learned more that it actually helps with homeostasis support as well. And therefore, this Microcystis perfora ferment is thought to be kind of an emerging oceanic plant adaptogen. And the reason it's now being classified as an emerging adaptogen is because new studies have shown the Microcystis perfora actually helps modulate the endocannabinoid system in the skin. And for those of you who don't know, the endocannabinoid system is a local regulatory network in the skin, and endocannabinoids are these lipid messengers that are made by lots of different skin cells, and they're only made when the skin is imbalanced or stressed. And when the skin is stressed, they're released. I like to think of the endocannabinoid system kind of as a thermostat that only kind of kicks on when it's too hot to kind of bring the room back to a normal temperature, or you can think of it as like the guardrails when you bowl. The endocannabinoids are only released when needed, and the guardrails are only there if the ball is kind of like veering off to one side, and it helps kind of bring everything back to the middle or back to homeostasis or a stable state. And therefore, by modulating the endocannabinoid system, Microcystis perfora ferment helps maintain balance and therefore is an emerging adaptogen. And this is just the study that goes over that. And they did another study similar to the other one I just shared after RF microneedling, and they showed that it did help with barrier damage and helped reduce erythema after a procedure. And here are just the two serums I talked about. One of them is available in Asia, and the other one I think soon will be available in Asia. But there are so many serums out there that do contain adaptogens in a lot of Japanese, Korean, Asian skincare. So just in summary, adaptogens have been used for thousands of years. They're nothing new, but they are a relatively new and under-discussed category, in my opinion at least, in the skincare world. They are overall very well tolerated. So my patients with rosacea, my patients with sensitive skin, I like to put those patients on adaptogenic serums. I also anecdotally find that if a patient's having trouble tolerating a retinoid, sometimes adding an adaptogenic serum helps them tolerate more active ingredients better. Clinically, they can help kind of with global skin quality improvement, but to me, in a lot of these studies, the thing that stands out most is the improvement in erythema, and they can be definitely helpful in the peri-procedural period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. So our next speaker is not new to us, a dermatologist whose expertise in research and cosmetic dermatology is well known. Let us all welcome Dr. Patrick Wang from Taiwan.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick Huang, a dermatologist from Kaohsiung, Taiwan. It is a real pleasure to be here and to share this session with my fellow panelists who are all dermatologists, actually. That's so important because as a dermatologist, we spend our lives looking at skin, and the skin quality is much more than what we see on the surface. So today, I would like to share some clinical insight from some of my recent publications, along with several papers. Actually, I consider particularly thought-provoking. So, I'm deeply honored that WCD has appointed Dr. Achima and me as two of the Asian Pacific ambassadors. Together, we'll present and promote this voice of the dermatology community across the Asian Pacific region. So I would like to invite you to speak for ASIAN at the World Congress of Dermatology in Mexico next year. This is part of my homework. Okay, so what is really happening when we see skin improvement? Is it repair or is it true regeneration? So here's my conflict of interest disclosure. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the lecture is supported by an educational grant from ESCOBio. I sincerely appreciate their support and trust. Importantly, they did not review or influence the content of this presentation, and everything I share today reflect my own interpretation of the evidence and clinical experience. So with that, let's move on to today's topic. So my clinic was one of the first 8 aesthetic clinics in Taiwan to be certified for cell therapy in 2021. So however, after receiving the certification from the government, I found myself facing an unexpected question. What should I do next? So in January this year, there was a letter published in the Aesthetic Surgery Journal led by Patrick Toner, who is a highly respected plastic surgeon. So in that letter, they point out that some of the commercial products are starting to blur the definition of regeneration, using the term regenerative aesthetics for marketing. So even when the underlying biology may not truly support it, so they call it for. So actually, they called for a clearer definition to bring the concept of regeneration back to its scientific foundation. And when I read this, I was honestly both surprised and very moved. So this data highlight 3 key points. Collagen stimulator can stimulate fibroblasts and induce neocollagenesis, but they argue that this process is better defined as tissue repair rather than true regeneration. Second, they raise the concern about the influence of commercial language. The authors criticize the term biostimulation, which lack a clear definition. And third, they propose a distinction. Collagen deposition is a repair, and immune modulation and matrix remodeling is regeneration. So as a section editor of aesthetic surgery at APS Journal, I have the opportunity to review many emerging concepts and new technology in our field. So this particular article caught my attention because many of the concerns and perspectives raised by the author closely align with my own views on regenerative aesthetics, stem cells, exosomes, and the future of skin quality treatment. So one concern I have is that we often use the term regeneration too loosely. So true regeneration should mean complete restoration of the tissue without scar formation. So by that definition, CAHA actually is probably close to scar-like repair, whereas ADSC or nanofat are conceptually closer to regenerative medicine. So the following cases were all previously treated with biostimulatory fillers. For various reasons, the injected material were later excised, so allowing us to examine the tissue response grossly or histologically. The first case involved CAHA used for nasal augmentation, which was very, very popular in Taiwan probably 15 years ago. The material was surgically removed approximately 2 years after injection. So this nodule was surgically removed several years after PLA injection, providing an opportunity to examine the long-term tissue response. At the first glance, the injected PCL almost looks like a fat tissue, which is often attributed to its scaffold-like function. But when we take a closer look, it becomes difficult to describe this is true bioregeneration. What we mainly see is a foreign body reaction followed by collagen's deposition, tissue remodeling, and repair. So the aesthetic outcome probably may be excellent, but the favorable clinical results do not necessarily mean that regeneration has occurred. So what do we really mean by regeneration? In my view, this should be closer to something like a salamander. Wherever after a limb is lost, it can grow back completely with both structure and function fully restored. So if we translate this concept to the skin, true regeneration would mean the tissue can restart its own biologic program to synthesize key components like HA again and restore the overall architecture toward normal. And ideally, it would go further to include the regeneration of the skin appendage, such as hair follicle and sebaceous glands. So from a histological perspective, we began to see organized collagen alignment and reconstruction of elastic fiber network. Functionally, the skin barrier moves closer to normal. Elasticity improves, vascular perfusion increases, and both pigmentation and inflammation are reduced. At the molecular level, we also can distinguish fibrotic repair from regenerative process. Fibrotic repair are typically characterized by increased TGF-beta activity, so leading to excessive collagen deposition and tissue stiffness. In contrast, a regenerative environment is associated with angiogenesis and a more organized extracellular matrix remodeling. So over the past 2 years, I have an unexpected realization. Actually, I gradually found a way to integrate regenerative medicine into both clinical dermatology and aesthetic practice, particularly in cases where conventional treatment have reached their limits. Exosome have become an additional tool in my treatment strategy. So in many ways, they have become an important option for managing more challenging or treatment-resistant cases. So within a little more than a year, we are fortunate to see 3 of our studies accepted and published. The first was the world's first reported case of pediatric hemophilia, demonstrating hair regrowth after laser aesthetic exosome delivery. So we applied topical rose stem cell derived exosome after fractional CO2 laser to enhance transdermal delivery in a case of Coude subtype hemophilia. To our knowledge, this may be the first reported case of scarring alopecia treated with exosome, highlighting the potential of laser aesthetic exosome therapy as a safe option for a patient without response to topical and systemic therapy. And this patient actually has been treated with methotrexate for more than 1 year, and of course, all kinds of topical I have applied. So this is a follow-up photo. The patient received 2 treatments till now. And there was another first case demonstrating repigmentation of the gray hair following exosome treatment. So as we know, hair graying is primarily caused by gradual loss and dysfunction of the melanocyte stem cell within the hair follicle. So in this multi-center study conducted by 5 dermatologists, including myself, we observed something quite unexpected. So hair repigmentation appeared after an average only 2.4 treatment session and was maintained for almost 5 months. So these findings suggest that exosome-based therapy may have the potential to influence follicular pigmentation biology in ways we are only beginning to understand. So overall, the results were quite encouraging. Actually, this is the hair of my staff. So 60% of the patient achieve more than 50% improvement. We found that patient with a shorter history of gray hair tend to respond better. And interestingly, individual with androgenetic alopecia and those with moderate baseline graying also shows more favorable outcome. So from a clinical perspective, this suggests that exosome may go beyond simple stimulation. So and to start to influence hair follicle biology more fundamentally. So mechanistically, this may involve the activation of melanocyte function, reduction of oxidative stress, and the modulation of the local microenvironment within the hair follicle. So this is not just about cosmetic improvement. This may reflect the shift toward functional restoration rather than simple repair. So in this study published in April this year, we compare RF microneedling alone versus RF microneedling combined with exosome. And both sides shows a clear improvement in wrinkle, skin texture, and pore size. So we start to see improvement at 1 month. It became more obvious by the second month. Based on the 3D analysis, the area treated twice with rose stem cells, exosome consistently achieved the best outcome. But the interesting part actually is about the pore size. Microneedling alone already provide good result, but with the addition of the RCE, the result was faster and more durable. Pore size improved by 21% at 1 month, and they remained about 38 better at 6 months, outperforming microneedling alone. Actually, microneedling RF is well established for the treatment of acne scar and enlarged pores, but is the addition of the exosome necessary when addressing this concern? So after the first treatment, the two sides, in this case, actually the patient is very oily, has a very oily skin and a very large pore size. So after the first treatment, both sides actually perform almost identical because it just only apply exosome on one side, but just the other side just only RF microneedling alone. So however, by the 6 months follow-up, after 2 treatment sessions, the clear difference had emerged. The right side, which received only RF microneedling, shows noticeably greater improvement. Interesting, the control side actually shows that shows better response, but the exosome treated side shows that only improved skin quality, but not pore size. So this is a paradoxical finding, really surprised me, because exosome will activate the activity of the SIBO side. So clinically, it's not good for our patient, but functionally, it will restore the function of the sebaceous gland. So with this mechanism may contribute to wound healing and tissue regeneration. It may also increase the SIBO site activity in certain type of skin, patient skin. So therefore, regenerative effect do not necessarily translate into better pore size reduction. So in patients with oily or sebaceous dominant skin, exosome may actually attenuate the pore tightening effect of the RF microneedling. So if we compare different regeneration technology, most biostimulator works through control information and the result in collagen deposition and tissue remodeling. So exosome, however, appear to work through a different biological pathway. So this distinction matters because regeneration is not simply, it's not simple about making more collagen. True regeneration involves restore both structure and function. So through this lecture, I've tried to show that the challenge is no longer whether regenerative medicine works. This challenge is defining what we mean by regeneration and how we measure it and how we separate true regeneration from repair and remodeling. So the future of the regenerative aesthetics must be driven by evidence, not terminology. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you for this excellent session. And now I'd like to call our colleague from India, Dr. Mustasha Shengdek. I always think it's difficult to pronounce your name, sorry, but your talks are always excellent. Welcome.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So I'm going to be speaking on neurocosmetics and mood-enhancing cosmetics. So can we change the view, please? Use presenter view. No? You need to change that one. Let's go. Okay, perfect. That's great. Can you, okay. So I think you're going to be hearing a lot in the next 3 days, and we're going to be talking about neural networks, skin histology, and an emotional wellness concept. So this is the next generation of skincare. It's not simply targeting cells and pathways. It's targeting experiences, emotions, and the skin-brain connection. So why do neurocosmetics matter in 2026? Beauty is no longer about appearance. You've got the key drivers. There is a rise of psychodermatology. There is an awareness of stress-induced skin disease. There is consumer demand for emotional wellness. So you've got personalized, neuroscience-backed skincare. And the growth of the skin and wellness industry is something we're all aware of. So what's the clinical reality? The clinical reality is that stress worsens acne, rosacea, atopic eczema, sensitive skin, and we've known that stress accelerates skin aging. So the new thought process, dermatologists have always treated the skin. Neurocosmetics ask whether or not we can modulate the skin's emotional biology. So the skin-brain axis, what is the science? The ectoderm, the skin and nervous system are both derived from the ectoderm. We have CRH, cortisol, catecholamines, and neuropeptides. There is a brain-skin connection. We have sensory neurons, we have cytokines, we have neurotransmitters, and we have touch-mediated signaling. And the major mediators, which you already heard in the previous lecture, substance P, CGRP, beta endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, and the oxytocin pathways. So if you look at all of these, we know that the skin and brain are connected. So what are neurocosmetics? There is an official definition of neurocosmetics, and they are products which are not absorbed products applied on the skin, exhibiting activity on the cutaneous nervous system, or in general, effects on the skin mediators. So neurocosmetics are non-toxic, bioactive topical products that contain ingredients that actually are designed to work at a neurological level and not elsewhere. These topical products interact with the cutaneous sensory receptors and the neurotransmitters, neuropeptides, and the inflammatory pathways. What is the goal? The goal is to improve skin appearance, reduce stress-induced skin responses, and enhance a sensory well-being. The mechanisms that I've already told you, but I think I want to highlight the last one. The neurocosmetic also adds a pleasurable sensory experience. So what are the neuroactive ingredients with emerging evidence? You've got the peptides, which we're already using. So acetyl tetrapeptide, palmitoyl tetrapeptide. You've got the adaptogens, which you heard about in the earlier lecture, ashwagandha, rhodiola, ginseng. You have the cannabinoid-related ingredients, so the CBD derivatives. You've got Centella asiatica. A lot of you already have experience with that. And the potential actions are neuroinflammation reduction. These are words you're going to be hearing over the next 3 days. Reduction of inflammation, inflammaging, barrier repair. The focus is on all of this. So you have to keep this in mind. What are mood-enhancing cosmetics? So the neuroscience of sensory beauty. This is olfaction. So the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the limbic system are involved. Oxytocin, dopamine, reduced cortisol for touch. The textural and the ritual enhances the comfort and mindfulness. So this is the newer, I think the newer evolution of neurocosmetics, mood-enhancing cosmetics. So there is something known as fragrance neuroscience, and we've also got a new terminology called emotional dermatology. And what are the actives involved in this? You've got the relaxation actives. When you walk into the spa, you get the lavender, the chamomile, you get neroli, the positive effects with jasmine and rose. You've got the energy with citrus and rosemary. And the potential effects of these mood-enhancing cosmetics are reduced anxiety. So you all feel better when you walk into a spa. You all know that feeling where you just kind of calm down. The improved well-being. And these give you a better adherence and skincare experience. How does it translate to dermatology? Where would you use it? You'd use it in acne. You'd use it in rosacea, where you reduce the inflammation. You'd use it in sensitive skin syndrome, which is what we're seeing with social media. Everybody's coming in with sensitive skin. This is a place where your neurocosmetics can come in. Atopic dermatitis, we know that it's a very, very stress-aggravated condition. Sensory comfort and barrier support. Now, evidence. As a dermatologist, we always need to look for evidence. What is the evidence and what is the controversy? So it's proven that stress affects skin biology. Touch influences emotional state. Fragrance affects the limbic system. Neurogenic inflammation exists. This is all proven. What is uncertain is the magnitude of the mood effect. What are the long-term outcomes? What are the biomarkers which are clearly measurable? And what are the regulatory definitions? So the future of neurocosmetics, 2026 to 2030, what do we see as the future? AI-guided emotional skincare, already happening. Biomarker-driven neurocosmetics. So a neurocosmetic with a proven influence on the biomarkers. Neurosensory delivery systems, and integrative psychodermatology. This is the future. This is what's coming to you. And future dermatologists need to target the skin-brain axis. So mood-enhancing cosmetics, beyond fragrance, the 4 pillars you need to know: fragrance, texture, temperature, and the touch ritual. So there's a concept of emotional efficacy and, importantly, patient perceived comfort as an outcome measure. Post-procedure. Now, neurocosmetics already have a place. There's a lot of literature showing improvement post-procedure. It targets anxiety, burning, redness, tightness, and the sleep disturbance, so the pain following your microneedling RF, your fractional CO2s, where the healing is important. And what are the actives that have been proven? Palmitoyl tripeptide, acetyl tetrapeptide, panthenol, centella, ectoin. All of these have been shown to have proven efficacy post-lasers, radiofrequency, microneedling, peels, energy devices, and injectables. The neurocosmetics with the placebo advantage. Now, this I think is very important. Patient satisfaction, a clinical result, and an emotional experience. This will give you patient satisfaction. The neuro recovery protocol. So when you're in your office, can you implement something like this? A cooling mask post-procedure, a relaxation fragrance, and a guided recovery routine. And this piece of the placebo advantage effect will enhance the healing. It's been already proven. I have no disclosures for this lecture. I'm giving you some of the brands that are around in the neuropeptide, neurocosmetic, and mood-enhancing cosmeceutical space. All of these products are already on the market. And these are some of the brands which have been inspired by neuroscience, neurocosmetics. Moodceuticals, the XOMD. Now, this is a moodceutical. It's already on the market and fuses skincare with emotional wellness. The evidence, as I said, you have to look at the evidence and what is the future. It is combining neurocosmetics with devices. There are already lasers and devices using these products. So if I had to tell you what is the gap is that we've got a high patient awareness already. Physicians are skeptical. There is a pressure for doctors. We have needle-phobic patients. So there's definitely a place where we can use the next level of dermocosmetics. It is a future opportunity for the dermatologists. The recovery kits, the mood mapping. And in conclusion, the skin is not merely a barrier. It is an emotional organ. The future of dermatology lies not in changing how the skin looks, but also understanding how the skin feels. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukta. I feel that we still have time for some questions from the audience. By the way, this was a wonderful session. Thank you very much to all speakers for your high-yield contributions.
There's a question here. Can you go to the microphone, please? Feel free for big questions.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hello, Dr. Gupta. So I've seen in your slides that you do dabble in transmagnetic stimulation. Is this to act? Hello? Yes. So I've seen in your slides that you did mention over there, like the transcranial magnetic stimulation to access the skin, neural axis, right? So for the protocol that you used, because they only have 2 published protocols for OCD and for major depression. So for protocol is inhibition of anxiety, usually they don't have good studies with it.
Yeah, we've been doing some work with this. Now, ExoMind is one of the newer devices that we are working with. There is no established protocol yet. I will tell you that anything which is non-medical, so to speak, or non-pathological, it's very difficult to quantify responses. We're using EEGs to measure responses to skincare. Now, if I use an EEG, whether the patient feels it or not, the brain waves are reflecting. We're actually doing studies with EEGs for this. ExoMind does not have any established public protocols as we speak. Okay?
Yeah, so I've also been talking to some like manufacturers for TMS,
Yeah.
like Kimchi, and I don't think they do EEG for checking neuroplasticity and
No.
How does that work though?
No, so this is all in the investigative or research space. It's not something you can translate to clinical practice. Now, if are you an aesthetic dermatologist? What practice do you have?
I do practice aesthetic dermatology and cosmetic surgery, but I also did a workshop with TMS technologies.
Okay, so if you're looking to integrate something into your practice, there are devices we've worked with. There is an AI-driven device where they measure, they make the patient wear the AI device, and you can measure the responses and brain responses to the products. I would recommend that if you're using it in a simple clinical practice versus non-research, you go with one of those kind of devices. Putting an EEG in practice is completely not feasible. We use EEG in the research space to measure or quantify. So if I can tell you that, look, this product does have a mentally calming or stimulating effect, I need to have an EEG proof. But from a clinical perspective, I don't think that's a feasible.
So is it?
Yeah.
I have some experience. I do agree with you, like our mind is everything. I use some fragrance, and they ask artificial intelligence to choose with mood, like to feel calm. And in Brazil, I'm from Brazil, we can order
But your point is brilliant, that what do you like? Now, you may like rose, and I may not like rose. And if I don't like it, my reaction is going to be completely different with the EEG and with everything. So I think it's also that...
And made a difference in the result, final
Exactly.
result. You can choose the fragrance, or you can feel the mood.
Right.
If you are too stressed, you can feel unstressed. And this similar cream, I didn't publish it yet. I'm so glad that I saw your talk. I might publish. It's not something that's going to add a lot of money. And after the procedure, they mask the patient and apply after the procedure. The patient can choose.
Choose it.
So
You know,
thank you.
this space is so tricky because it is the emotional, the mind, and the science. So it's so tricky. And the literature is all over the place because you cannot
For the same
prove
person.
everything unless you have hardcore evidence.
So for the EEG follow-up question, Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
is it like an increase in the beta waves or delta waves? What are you
Yeah, so we
specifically
found
looking for?
different reactions. I can share, some of it is,
Ask one quick
we
question
can't give you that detail because it belongs to an industry company. But I can share a paper with you that will give you the direction you're looking for.
And is Exomine
I'm
something
sorry, we do
you're-
have...
We can take it
Can
off.
you talk to her? Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I know it's excellent. Guess what? She's going to stay in this room with me. So you have more. So I have a question for Dr. Jacqueline. Could you mention the name of the drugs that is already available for the endo? Do you mind if she say the commercial name? Because she just mentioned there is something, but we'd like to know the commercial name.
Oh, one of them is, it's called Maestro Active Balance Serum by Skin Better Science, which is launching in Asia, I think, this upcoming year. And then the other one of the La Mer products.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Do you want to have a question for your friend?
I think we can
more
accommodate
question.
like one last question before we end the session.
All right, thank you to all the speakers for a very fascinating topic. I was wondering if anybody have experience with applying adaptogens or any topicals in the patient population who, to me, has the ultimate skin damage, which is post-skin graft patient. Does anybody have experience with that? Because one of the problems is skin dryness and it doesn't
Exactly.
behave as that. So.
Maybe Jacqueline can answer the question because you're part of the
Adaptogen.
original research. Yeah.
So we tested it in the peri-procedural period and in patients with rosacea. We haven't, to my knowledge, there's no data or studies looking at post-skin grafting, but I would think many adaptogenic products would be totally fine and safe in that patient population, but area for future research.
We do have many questions here. We don't have time to answer, but I will ask the speakers to come for a picture, and after maybe you can ask each of one, and I invite you to stay in this room, and she's going to be the first one. Yeah, next talk. You were the first, and I'm the last.
Okay,
I'm not chair anymore.
Maybe also have a round of applause for all the speakers.
Thank you for the audience.